Billy's in trouble against Robo-Rita, but Jason, Tommy, Kimberly, Zach, and Trini show up for a little bit of that oft-repeated Power Rangers virtue, teamwork. But of course, only Zach and Billy are really there, so they have to pull out their tried and true tricks of convincing the audience otherwise. Hello everybody, Mr. Fusion here to talk about media. I think I'm already kinda late to the party on this one, but I actually did see it on release day. Since Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has become something of a recurring fixture on my channel, and I happened to have a Netflix subscription in April, I decided to check out Mighty Morphin Power Rangers once and always. This isn't the all-new Mighty Morphin Zyurangers, but it is the next best thing. Coming out in 2023, this serves as a 30th anniversary celebration of the original incarnation of this long-running franchise. Obviously, it's primarily meant for people of my generation who were little kids when this was on TV, and who would be eager to see those characters again and find out what they've been up to. Is it any good from that angle? I would say so. Here's the caveat. It seems to me a lot of fans want a Power Rangers reunion to have grown up with them. I feel like everybody talks about a gritty Power Rangers reboot with death and swearing and blackjack and hookers. I think it was IGN's review that lamented that this was not done in a way that matches how adults remember Power Rangers being when they were kids. In other words, they want to be validated that MMPR is just as mature and epic as it appeared when they were 7. And that's certainly a valid viewpoint. If you haven't watched Mighty Morphin Power Rangers since you were 7, Once and Always might feel like being doused with ice water. But as someone who has over the past few years returned to analyze those shows from my childhood, I found this ice water refreshingly honest. I feel like I lost that metaphor somewhere along the way. But while Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always might not be how you prefer to remember it, it's very much what it was. A charmingly earnest, primary color-infused action romp with hokey effects and writing, brimming with ambition that it can't always live up to. And to me, that's part of the charm too.
Messing with this place was a big mistake.
From what I understand, the genesis of this idea ties back into David Yost's pitching of his Quantum Continuum follow-up. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I've read, and Yost has been talking about that idea for the past few years on Twitter. As such, it's pretty logical that David Yost's Billy has one of the biggest roles in this special. He and Walter Emmanuel Jones's Zach are the two lead characters. And I find that fascinating given that neither of them had reprised their roles since they left the franchise. I think Walter Jones did some voice work in Forever Red, but the characters of Billy and Zach had pretty much been left in stasis since their actors departed. It wasn't like, say, Tommy, who would frequently return to the franchise. Whenever the series needed to indulge in some MMPR Black Ranger nostalgia, they'd usually go for Adam. And given David Yost's account of how he was treated on set in the 90s, his absences aren't terribly surprising. But in terms of the original cast, Austin St. John, Amy Jo Johnson, and Jason David Frank had all made returns after their initial departures. These two never had? So it's great to see them again. This story is very much inspired by the real-life passage of time. Namely, it is centered around the 2001 death of Thuy Trang, who had played Trini, the Yellow Ranger. It is very much a tribute to her. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that Trini is killed off at the beginning of the movie, and the plot revolves around dealing with that loss, especially as it pertains to the daughter she left behind, Min. The film is dedicated to the memories of both Trang and Jason David Frank, who did not participate in the film, but who likewise passed away in between the production and the release. And while I don't think a character necessarily has to follow their actor's path, it does end up feeling really sweet and genuine. But I'm not going to get too bogged down in that because the story doesn't either. It's a launching point, but it really can't feel too grim when you have men spouting lines like, "Robo Rita killed my mom!" It's inherently campy, and it knows it. The timing of this is actually really funny for me. I recently released a Mighty Morphin Zyurangers video. I think I finished it right as this special came out. And in that video, I talked about the differences in how Zyuranger and Power Rangers handled their plots and their tone. I mean, I almost always do in that series, but it was especially apparent in this one, where the Zyuranger episode was a romantic melodrama filled with heightened emotions and over-the-top acting. It was an aspect that I really loved about it, how unabashedly it presents it. "I'll never give up on you. I don't care how many fake blood packets I must squeeze with my hands. No, I hurt you. I'll rip my own scarf to dress your wounds. Please, please don't go, my love. You're too injured. You'll never survive. No, I must go and help my friends. I can't bear it." And I made the argument then that its corresponding Power Rangers adaptation was so different because MMPR didn't really go for that kind of tone. Well, here it does, by really playing into the death of Trini and the daughter she leaves behind. And that's another reason why I loved this. It basically takes the melodrama of Zyuranger and mixes it with the camp of Power Rangers, and it is a surprisingly tasty concoction. Again, I've been pitting these two series against each other for a while now, so I don't know if this special was made specifically for my tastes, as some kind of answer to my review series, but it sure seems like it. It's this weird little experiment that I can't help but be tickled by. It certainly helps that the special does make a reference to Bandora.
Attention Power Rangers! Get to your assigned stations now!
Okay, from this point on, it's oops all spoilers. You've been warned, let's just go. There is a sweet story here. Min has to overcome her feelings of vengeance as well as blaming Billy for the death of her mom because he's the one who accidentally revived Rita in the first place, and Trini takes the hit that would have killed him. She snags Trini's old morpher, attempting to use it to fight back against Robo Rita's threat, but it never works for her until she tries to sacrifice herself for Billy. Then she becomes the new Yellow Ranger. Part of me wants to believe that Billy created new morphers that don't work until the other Rangers have pledged their undying loyalty to him. It's nothing deep or complex, but it is a through line, one that is set up and paid off. It works. I recently reviewed the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which I also enjoyed quite a bit, but my biggest complaint was how often it seemed to set things up and not really pay them off either in a satisfying way or at all. However, so much of the backlash to complaints about that movie is, "Oh, this is a kid's movie, why do you want some deep plot? It's just about getting the Mario stuff into a movie, and that's fun, stop bringing in your unfair expectations." But no, Once and Always is hardly sophisticated entertainment, even though its target demographic has to be adults in their 30s, right? The storytelling is very much the same kind of childlike simplicity that Power Rangers is known for. My point is, you can acknowledge a piece of media as being for children while still expecting storytelling coherence within that framework. Had this taken the same path as the Mario movie, Min would have been kidnapped the entire time with nothing to do, only to show up at the very end and resolve an arc that was never really explored in the first place. I think it does run up on a little bit of mixed messaging though. At one point, Billy has a plan to trap the monsters by using an electromagnet. And it works surprisingly easily, and the Rangers are all celebrating it, only for Min to chime in to say, "Why aren't we killing them?" And the Rangers are acting completely aghast at this prospect. "We don't kill people unless we have to." There is a good message about vengeance versus justice, but it's a bit undermined by the fact that Power Rangers almost never treats these monsters as people. It's all about killing them at the end. And they unrepentantly kill these guys at the end. They even gun down Robo Rita despite the fact that she's actually possessing Alpha 8. They just kill their own robot buddy and never express any kind of hesitation or remorse. As such, the idea that Min is out of control because she wants to kill the monster doesn't make a lot of sense. You either have to accept that these walking, talking monsters aren't real people and are just baddies to have a fun time destroying, or you have to wrestle with the emotional consequences of having to snuff out life on a daily basis for the greater good, which is not a lot of fun. It's hard to have it both ways. Once the Power Rangers get a completed team of 5, they summon the good old Megazord. Somehow. If we talk about how or why all the old powers work, it's way out of the scope of this review. Like killing monsters, you kind of have to just roll with it. But a Megazord fight on the moon very much reminds me of the final level of the Super NES video game. Megazord is now represented by computer graphics instead of models, and the CG is almost as good as the CG from the 1995 movie. Okay, but here's the stuff I really wanted to get into. As you know, a lot of my adult interest in Power Rangers is in going back and seeing the seams, pointing at my screen and going, aha, I see why that had to be done that way. In my Mighty Morphin Zyuranger series, a lot of that's because Power Rangers is just an awkward reusing of existing footage. And as a kid, you might not see it, but as an adult, it becomes extraordinarily apparent, and that's why I do what I do. To me, that's what's fun about it. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always is all original footage. It's not adapting Zyuranger or any other Sentai. However, that's not the only way Power Rangers has been awkward in putting itself to the screen. I was giddy a few months ago getting to cover a Season 2 episode, one that laid bare how much work they had to do covering for the absence of their actors when they left the show. The whole thing is full of an obvious focus on Tommy, Kimberly, and Billy, the only 3 Rangers they could do anything with. There are the obvious body doubles staged to be looking away from the camera. There are the obvious vocal doubles that only sound vaguely like the characters they're impersonating.
Oh man, can you do that?
This special suffers all of those things too, and I am absolutely here for it. See, the main roadblock this story faces is that it's a celebration of the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but only 2 of the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers are in it. This special opens with an inspiring action scene of the 6 original heroes working together like they always have. Billy's in trouble against Robo Rita, but Jason, Tommy, Kimberly, Zach, and Trini show up for a little bit of that oft-repeated Power Rangers virtue, teamwork. But of course, only Zach and Billy are really there, so they have to pull out their tried and true tricks of convincing the audience otherwise. The first trick is to only see the other 4 characters in costume. They show up already morphed. The second trick is to only give Zach and Billy significant dialogue. Zach's the one who asks Billy questions to get them up to speed. The third trick is to put voices in their mouths. This is the one I'm not sure about. They're all given pretty generic dialogue. I'd say Tommy, Trini, and Kimberly sound pretty spot on. I don't know if those are voice doubles or if they're just sourcing prior audio. When Trini yells, "Billy!" before she sacrifices herself for him, it certainly sounds like the delivery she had in High Five.
Billy! Billy, come back!
But Jason does not sound anything like Austin St. John, so I'm not sure what happened there. I'm not going to call this next one a trick. To me, this is them clearly showing their hand. After Trini dies, so they can get an emotional human moment, Zach and Billy take off their helmets so they can look sad. Nobody else does. The fourth trick. Only Billy and Zach show up to Trini's house to tell Min about her dead mom. They exposit the other Rangers are conveniently in the dark dimension searching for Robo Rita. The fifth trick. The special skips ahead a year. Zach is now Min's legal guardian. The team are getting together at Trini's grave at the anniversary of her death. However, Zach and Min are running late. They're having an expository dialogue conversation. As you know, Uncle Zach, you were a senator. However, off in the distance, they hear the other characters morphing and realize a fight has started without them. I actually really like that one. It's a nice dramatic moment that also happens to disguise the fact that the actors aren't there so that Zach and Min can show up after everyone else is already in costume. The sixth trick. Another one I'm pretty impressed by. They space out their leads. See, in Season 2 when they were pulling this crap, everything was always two groups. Jason, Trini, and Zach, and Tommy, Kimberly, and Billy. You had your not actors and your actors. Here, they don't make it quite as obvious by mixing characters together. It opens with just Billy. Zach is mixed in with all the others when they show up to help him. Zach and Kimberly help Billy get up while the other three fight. Now, Billy is with the others, already transformed before Zach gets there. I like this, you're being clever. And the final trick for the evening. Now that we've established Jason, Tommy, and Kimberly exist in this story, get them out of the story as quickly as possible so that no one's expecting them to be around anymore. One of Rita's monsters, the Snizzard, has the ability to turn Power Rangers into action figures to power her machine to make a time travel port. Okay, look, it gets those characters out of the way for the rest of the special and gives Zach and Billy further motivation to stop Robo Rita. Throw in a few lines at the end, then, we'll get them back to normal. And then that's it. That's it. And I should mention the choice of monsters here is really weird. Robo Rita employs mechanical versions of Snizzard and Minotaur from the first season. Nothing wrong with that, but had I not spent the last few years analyzing this show, I would have already forgotten that because they could be anybody. At least Snizzard has a specific function, that of turning Power Rangers into fanboy collectibles, even if that is in no way related to the skills he had in the original show, or even Zyuranger for that matter. Minotaur holds an iPad that tells him the location of Morph Power Rangers. That's it. That's his only job. It's not a problem, it just comes across to me like they scanned the earliest episodes of MMPR and just picked the first two monsters that seemed appealing. Seeing the pre-release photos and trailers of this was confusing for me because I knew that at least 6 returning Rangers were in this. And it didn't make sense to me because the way they were being presented seemed to show different tiers of how these characters were used. Adam and Aisha are clearly in this, but they don't seem to be Power Rangers. Rocky and Kat are Power Rangers, but they don't seem to get as much promotional focus as Billy and Zach. Why are only red, pink, blue, and black represented in promotional material? None of that really gelled for me until I saw the special and realized that this is exclusively about the original Season 1 team, whether those actors are actually there or not. The Season 2 and 3 characters are just there to fill in the gaps left by the Season 1 absences, which is really the only reason they existed in the show in the first place. Adam and Aisha have the sitcom-esque excuse of, we're stuck in traffic, space traffic, and won't make it to you until all the action is over, because they're not needed. See, the special's goal is to make a complete Ranger team, cobble it together however they can. You don't need Adam because Zach is already your Black Ranger. You don't need Aisha because Min is the surprise Yellow Ranger they're building up to. Rocky and Kat get to don the suits because they need a red and a pink. However, all they do is fill the suits because this isn't about them. They don't have any roles in the story beyond being Power Rangers. Tommy doesn't even have to be replaced because you don't actually need him to have a full Power Rangers team. You really just need 5. That's very fortunate given that Tommy's the only character to have ever used those powers. I can't imagine how this would have worked if David Yost wasn't in it, as he's the only Blue Ranger. And that's why we end up with this weird, tiered system of characters. The actual stars of this story are Billy, Zach, and Min. As for Rocky, Aisha, Adam, and Kat, the mindset is very much, okay, we're glad you're here, we'll find spots for you somewhere. But I really can't be mad at that because it is so a Power Rangers thing to do. And it's not even manufactured for the nostalgia. They really did once again find themselves in the same predicament and went back to the same deceptions to awkwardly muddle through it. To me, that is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Rita Repulsa?
No, it can't be.
Now, the cynical side of me wants to say that 2023 has hit peak nostalgia baiting for aging millennials. Within weeks of each other, we have a big-budget Hollywood recreation of the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. Jean-Luc Picard and his crew step once more onto the bridge of the Enterprise D, and our favorite middle-aged adults with attitude step back into their multicolored spandex for one more fight against Rita Repulsa. Our lives are hopeless, we have nothing to look forward to, so we drown our sorrows in childhood nostalgia. And I admit this increasing tendency is getting a bit difficult to ignore. However, I can't say I didn't enjoy this one. To me, it's fascinating in how it manages to perfectly capture everything about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, even the things it might have chosen not to include had it had the choice. So, no, I don't agree with IGN's or whoever's assertion that this should have been Power Rangers as we mistakenly remembered it. This is perfect exactly as it is because it's so imperfect. And if Power Rangers is something you loved as a kid, maybe it's time to see it for what it is and come to appreciate it for that. Power Rangers is schlock. Embrace the schlock! Thanks so much for watching and for listening to me get so excited about how missing actors are written out of a special more so than its actual story. I'm nothing if not incredibly weird. Please say hello to my patrons. They are basically the Power Rangers action figures that power my diabolical machine to feed myself. That's not insulting to frame that this way, is it? Really though, I love you guys. I hope you know that. But my machine, it doesn't travel through time. It's not anything quite as exciting to hang a 30th anniversary special on, but to me it's still invaluable. I very much appreciate all of you. And if you want to get in on the fun at patreon.com/MrFusion, I have a new goal up. When I meet it, I will review the Dragon Ball prototype stories in a new installment of Dragon Ball Dissection Gaiden. Yeah, I already invested in Japanese copies of these stories and have started scanning them. There's always a new adventure just on the horizon in the land of Mr. Fusion, so I hope to see you seeing them, and I'll see you next time.